What does bringing a TJ back from the dead have to do with this? Absolutely nothing.
I didn't scare at all.
Today on Xtreme 4x4, we'll uncrate some really cool parts to build a roll cage, link suspension, and more. Plus, who needs a big wheel? These tykes race trophy carts.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4 and our Jeep TJ dual-purpose build-up. We picked up that 2003 TJ from Davies Jeeps as a rebuildable insurance write-off. And now that we have all the parts stripped off that we're not going to use, we can go ahead and sell them to offset the cost of the truck itself.
Nice! Well, I guess we're going to have a scratch and dent sale on some Jeep parts this weekend. Now, as for our project vehicle, we started out by stretching the wheelbase to 100 inches and installing a set of crusher corners, not only to protect the tub when we're off-road, but to hide the damage that actually caused this Jeep to be written off in the first place. Now, by the end of today, we hope to have this thing sitting on some tires and wheels, but the first thing we're going to take care of today is getting a roll cage back in this tub. Bend location number 1 is 22 7/8.
Okay.
Both of them at 87 degrees.
The first step for this Jeep will be to tie the cage mounting plates into the Jeep's frame with poly bushings to eliminate vibrations. Then with the main hoop bent and tacked to the floor plates, the rear halo can be installed along with the kickers and the roof bars. With the dash pulled back from the tub, the front down tubes can be installed along with the dash bar. Now this is the point in our cage where we have to make the decision that everybody needs to make when building a project like this, the seat belt harness mounting location. Now ideally you want it to be 1 inch above to 4 inches below the shoulder height while sitting in the seat. In our case, that creates the problem of making it difficult to get in the back seat. But we're going to choose safety over comfort.
Now we spend a lot of time working with tubing here at Xtreme. And most of the time, you see us bend it, notch it, and then before you know it, bam, there's a whole roll cage inside the truck, just like this time. Now, we've spent time in the past talking about general cage design, as well as what kind of material to use for the best results. But how about just some basic tips and tricks to make working with tube easier for any project? Like, how do you get a piece of tubing to land right in the middle of an existing joint? Now, it's not that hard if you just think about the math. Now this angle right here is a total of 80 degrees. The tube is going to travel away from this joint back to the top at a 35-degree angle. So went ahead and put the tube in the notcher and cut a 35-degree angle on 1/2 of the tube. Now the other angle is a 45-degree angle. That's the difference between 35 and 80. By splitting that total amount between the two tubes, it'll fit perfectly every time.
Now when it actually comes time to weld in those nice tight fitting notches, another tip is how to grind the tubing before actually welding it in. Certain angles of certain notches create this very thin layer of steel around the outer edge. All you got to do is run a grinder around it and it'll knock down that thin layer as well as create a really good bevel to help improve the penetration on your weld.
Now, how you tack weld the tube is just as important as how you prep it for the joint. If you put a great big monster tack weld on this tube, when you ran your finish bead around it, it would jump up over that tack and honestly it's just going to look ugly. So really light tacks, just enough to hold the tube in place, is all that you need. But sometimes, no matter how much prep work you do, you end up with an ugly weld. To give you an idea of that, I went ahead and turned the welder down on this scrap and did a really cold weld here. And you can see it's just sitting up on top of the tube. There's almost no penetration. Now you can fix this, it's pretty easy, you just need to know how. The first thing we do is cut a groove into the bad weld through its entire length with just a cutoff wheel. Now this leaves the tube in its original position, but it allows the new weld bead to penetrate through it into the steel. Then with the welder adjusted to the proper amperage and correct wire speed, the joint can be re-welded, this time concentrating on proper torch technique. Now you can tell just by looking at these welds that the new one is a lot stronger. There's more heat input into the metal than this old, really cold one. Now a lot of guys will take these welds and grind them down smooth. I don't really like to do that. I find that it takes a little bit of the strength away from the joint. Instead, I try to concentrate on a good looking weld and just leave it alone.
Now gussets can also add some serious strength to any tube joint. In an area like this where you don't want to add another piece of tubing because it would be kind of hard to get in and out of the Jeep, gussets will really help. Now you have the option of the flat plate gussets, the tubing gussets, or you even have the option of these really little cool saddle gussets. Now hopefully all of these little tube tips and tricks will not only make your cage a lot stronger and safer, but it'll make it look a lot more extreme.
Coming up, adrenaline pumping, dirt flying action for ages 8 and up. We'll check out trophy kart racing when Xtreme 4x4 continues.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. When we go to championship off-road race, the stars of tomorrow get a chance to shine.
Now we're not talking about Casey Curry or Kyle LeDuc. These rookies don't even have a driver's license yet. Blasting around the racetrack with over 850 horses, there's nothing more intense than driving a pro core truck.
Driving these trucks is incredible. I mean, we stream these motors at 8,400 RPM, and I tell you what, we hit these jumps anywhere from 80 to 100 miles an hour and love sailing these trucks over 100 feet long.
It's truly an adrenaline rush.
To the kids, these men are more than racers.
Thank you. Kid looking up to you, wanting your autograph, thinking you're some sort of gladiator or hero, that just makes you, that puts you on top of the world. Thanks
to the Core Series, the kids aren't just watching their role models, they're racing like them too.
Pin it to win it.
Called trophy karts, kids as young as 8 race these half-size replicas just like their idol.
I go 20 miles an hour and it feels really cool going that fast.
It's really fun, especially when you get to pass people when you're up in the front.
Adding to the fun, the track looks and drives like the one the pros race on.
I like the straightaways. They're my favorite because you could go as fast as you want. You could go full throttle.
My favorite part of the track is the whoops. You get to jump very high and everything. And sometimes you get a pass because people don't like to jump very high.
I wish they were around when I was a kid. That's a lot of fun.
Whoever invented it, I mean, my hat's off to them.
They're having a great time, and that's what it's all about. And they're learning how to drive.
You know what? It's keeping them busy. Off-road racing in general, even before the trophy karts, has always been a family-oriented sport. So it keeps the kids off the street. It keeps them involved in things. And so what's really neat is now they're not only involved with our racing, they're involved with their own racing.
It was not so long ago when only a handful of karts came out to compete. Now there's no shortage of future superstars.
The trophy kart class is a phenomenal deal that's just taken the sport like a whirlwind over the last year and a half.
I think there was 85 karts today. You have modifieds and you have stocks and you have all different classes. So the trophy kart thing it's going to grow very, very large.
Troy Herbst is a multi-time Baja winner and desert racing champ. He also lays it down in the Core Series.
We're having a lot of fun.
His kids inherited that racing bug.
Now I have 3 of them racing, my son, daughter, and husband, so now I'm all nervous.
Daughter Shelby just started her 4-wheel career.
Didn't take any convincing. She was on the gas out there and having a lot of fun.
And 8-year-old Riley, who just like Dad, knows the thrill of victory.
Feels very good inside when you win.
Following the big dream.
When I'm older, I would like to race in Score and Core.
Riley's trophy kart is designed with his future plans in mind.
They took in a Kawasaki 450 motor, and what we've done with this horsepower to weight ratio, it has more torque and more bite than the Pro 4 that the big boys drive. So when these guys get their handling and get their drifting and being able to hit the bumps, by the time they're 16, 17 years old, that'll make the Pro 4 guys want to get the heck out of the way. As you can see up there, there's a shift. He's got to shift and go through the gears. What we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the to him being able to upshift or downshift, read the terrain, and be able to accelerate.
There's a lot going on in there. You have to push your radio button, steer, and shift at all the same time. It's kind of hard.
It'll be maybe a higher learning curve, but as soon as we get the shifting down and as soon as we understand what we can do, it'll just make us that better, much better of a team.
While they may be focused on the future, watching his children race, Troy Herbst hasn't lost sight of the now.
Now I know why my dad smiles so big when we come back in from a race, ear to ear, and I almost have more fun watching them than I do in Turn 1 and Pro 4, you know. I really have a good time with watching these kids.
He's not the only one having fun.
Very cool. If you haven't raced trophy cars, you have to come out here and watch the experience.
God, how much fun would that have been to race those as a kid?
It would have been pretty sweet. All I ever had was a big wheel. I wiped it out pretty bad, got a scar on my chin. That's why I got this half beard. Cover it up. Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. With a roll cage inside the tub to protect both the driver and the passenger, it's time to get this Jeep up in the air and deal with the suspension.
Now, since we use the crusher corners to extend the wheelbase out to 100 inches, an off-the-shelf suspension kit just won't work for this project. We are going to be using a custom link suspension both front and rear, but before any of the new parts have to go on, all the old bracketry has to come off. To keep things looking clean, the brackets are cut just outside of the factory weld.
Whoops.
Smells good.
It's because I cut the fuel line.
Welcome to the club, buddy.
So that's your first ever?
Yeah.
Well, it's good that the first time you ever accidentally cut fuel lines, you do it on national TV.
It's true. It's true.
Rookies.
We'll order new fuel lines after we grind the frame smooth. A coat of Duplicolor truck bed coating will not only make the frame look better, but it will also keep the freshly ground steel from rusting. Building a suspension for off-road duties isn't that difficult. Just follow a few guidelines and you're ready to roll. But to build a suspension that is also worthy of highway duties is a different story. A great option for the TJ is to use the Gen Right off-road rear 4-link and front 3-link kit. Not only is it made with 1/4 inch and 3/16 inch steel, as well as thick-walled DOM tubing, but the suspension geometry is great for off-road and great for on the street.
Now this is not a bolt-on kit and it obviously requires some welding, thanks. But the small amount of fabrication you have to do far outweigh the benefits that you're going to get from this type of suspension system. Now this is going to key off the inside of the frame rail right behind the skid plate. And the nice thing is it works hand in hand with the crusher corners we installed before, setting our new wheelbase at exactly 100 inches. With the frame prepped, the new link mounts are tacked in place. This suspension system uses Johnny joints at either end of the new tubes, with right-hand threads on one end and left hand on the opposite for plenty of suspension adjustment. We're using a mock-up axle with the Gen Right Dana 44 axle bridge kit to set up the links and set our wheelbase at 100 inches flat. Now this suspension is designed to work with either coil springs and shocks or coilovers or even air shocks. Now we decided to run a set of coilovers in the back of this truck, so we had Gen Right send us their rear coilover shock mount package. The new brackets are recessed into the frame rail to place the shocks at the ideal location for some serious articulation.
Time now for an Xtreme 4x4 tech tip.
Now we all know that it's good practice to change our transmission fluid in our automatics every 15 to 25,000 miles. But we also know it can be a real big pain in the butt because you have to drop the pan while the transmission is often still full of fluid, sometimes creating one huge mess. To make the job easier for the next time, you can go ahead and install a drain plug kit for about $13. Or for $2, you can make your own using a nut, a rubber washer, and a bolt. With a hole drilled in the pan and completely cleaned,
The nut is welded to the inside. It can either be TIG welded or brazed with a torch to help prevent leaks. Once cooled, reinstall the pan and your new plug. Now this will make your next transmission service go a lot easier because you can drain the fluid first and then remove the pan, eliminating the mess.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. Now, so far we have the rear suspension pretty much buttoned up on our Project TJ, and now it's time to take care of the front end. And just like the back, it's going to be a custom link setup riding on some coil-over shocks. But instead of a 4-link like we put in the rear, the front end is going to be a 3-link system. Now a 3-link is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to have 3 links locating our axle. 2 lowers are going to come off from the bottom of the frame and anchor to the bottom of the axle. A 3rd link will come out and mount on top of our axle center section, holding the axle underneath the truck. But those 3 links will not keep the axle from moving side to side underneath the vehicle. For that, we need to add a 4th link. A track bar or panhard bar will mount on top of our axle housing and travel up and anchor off the vehicle's frame, and that'll keep the axle from moving around. Now 3 links are pretty common. You see them a lot on full competition rock buggies because they work great off-road. They are unfortunately pretty difficult to set up to be used on the street on a daily basis. But the nice thing about our kit is all the math has been figured out for us and it's in these instructions. Now we can't go through the install complete step by step, it would just take too much time. But we know by following this setup here, our 3-link will work great right out of the box. To mock our suspension into place, we're just using some 3-inch exhaust tubing. That's the same diameter as the axle tubes on our 44s, and with everything tacked in place, we can cycle the suspension and check it for fit.
Our link suspension needs some coil-over shocks, and for this particular project, we chose King Off-Road Racing shocks. These 14 inches of travel, 2-inch body, remote reservoir shocks have a 7075 hard anodized piston and a heat-treated shaft, and they are valved specifically for our TJ. We will assemble our coilovers and temporarily install them until our Dana 44s have been delivered.
Well, that's about all we have for you guys today. The next time the TJ's back in the shop, we'll be bolting on some new wheels and tires.
Which means we can pull out these mock-up axles and replace them with our brand new solid axles.
Plus, we'll be throwing a whole bunch of accessories into this Jeep on the inside and out that I know you guys will just love. They'll love it.
Totally. All your hearts.